earlier, I'm Marlene Calabrese. I'll be your presenter today for this webinar, and the topic is on the client portal. And we'll talk a little bit about why someone would choose to use that and show you all the setup for it. And then, of course, it is always true, you can meet with your account manager after this call if you want to walk through some scenarios or you need their help with testing something that you're thinking about implementing, or even if you just have something that's kind of outside of, the norm of what we talk about today. We're going to talk about a very standard setup. And you might say, well, I have this special setup and I'd like someone to help me walk through that and get that set up. And that's what we're here for. So there's no charge for that. That's part of your support package. And you would just email support@workamajig.com to reach your account manager. Hopefully you know your account manager. If not, you should do that anyway, regardless of the webinar today. You should get to know your account manager because they definitely can help with anything that you're struggling to do within the tool and answer any questions that you might have. One thing I just want to point out is that I'm in my test account here. So the test account that I'm logged into is an admin account. That means that I have access to every area of the system. So if there's something that you see today that you says this, tells you, oh, I wish that I had that, or I don't see that option, it may just be that you need to be given additional rights if you're not an admin already. Some people are in an admin security group, but they're not truly an administrator on the account. Only an administrator on the account can make others an administrator, and only an administrator sees everything. So regardless of the security group you're in, if you have the checkbox in your employee record that you're an administrator, then you see everything. And this account, of course, is an administrator, so you'll see everything today. The other thing, a little bit of housekeeping, is we can't hear you. So if you're trying to talk and you're thinking, well, no one's responding, well, you have to use that little Q&A chat. We just found that we think the regular chat is disabled. So use the one that's labeled Q&A chat there if you need to ask a question. And then the other thing is that this recording will be available to listen to at any time. So if you want to share it with someone else, and they're actually within our help guide and also uploaded to YouTube. So I just want to quickly show you in our help guide, and it's just support.workamajig.com, and anyone can get to this site. You actually don't even have to be a Workamajig user to be able to access this site. It's an open website. And then we have a section here called webinars. So you have your webinars. You could click in here and find out what else is coming up this month, something like that. And you just have to keep clicking where until you get to a list. And then you also will be able to find the list of webinars that already exist. So if you were interested in just looking at the library or poking around in here for the webinars, then I would suggest if you know the topic you want, then you can just type it in the search. So if you say something like webinar, deliverables, because you might learn a little bit about deliverables and want to know more today, then you can see the list of deliverables, advanced deliverables, deliverables 101. Some of these have repeating information. They're not all different information. They're just done by different trainers. And then you can also, if you knew that it was like about billing, they have them some categorized here. So you could say, well, and this one only has one, but they could potentially have more than one option. So I just wanted to show you how to find them later. And usually it's about 24 to 48 hours before you see this webinar that we're doing today available to search and play and have recorded. So they Zoom sends them to our team, and then the team that builds the support site would upload them there. All right, we will be coming back to the help guide, but for now, I'm going to navigate back into my test account, and we're going to talk a little bit about basically what is the client portal and why would you use it. So client portal, you'll sometimes hear it called like a free user login or some other terminology, sometimes client vendor portal. But essentially what it does is allow you to have a very restricted view that you don't have to pay for a Workamajig license or seat for. for. So because you're not paying for them, there's a few things that a free user or a contact user, sometimes you'll hear it called that, client user, client portal, all of that is euphemisms for the same exact thing. And that is someone who can log in. So they'll do app 12 or whatever your server is. Maybe even your server has your company's name in it if you host on your own server. So the same address that you go to log into Workamajig, and then you'll be giving them a login and a password. And we usually recommend, and you probably know this already if you implemented the tool, if you're an administrator, we recommend that you use um, your email address for the login, and then something fairly simple for their password to start with, because I'll be showing you where they can go in and customize the password so that it's not too cumbersome where you're always having to reset folks' password. Because once you kind of set somebody up as a free user login, if they don't go in very frequently, then if they can't remember, they're not contacting us to reset that, they're contacting you. So you're going in and resetting. We won't reset it for a free user because we have to have the permission from the administrator. If you emailed us and said, would you please do it, we would do it, but we can't do it without you getting involved. So that's a good reason to encourage folks that you do give a free user login, that they change the password to something easy for them to remember. And we'll be showing you how to do that today. The other thing is that a lot of typical ad agencies don't use the free or client vendor portal login. It's really more commonly used by our internal marketing groups. Say you're a university and you have your own marketing team, and folks need to request projects from you, then they would use the client portal. We also have a lot of casinos that use Workamajig. They have an in-house marketing team. So if somebody, in one of the restaurants of the casino needs a new menu printed, they'd have to fill out a project request form and know all the details and be able to answer deadline questions and that sort of thing. And then that would get routed to you. So we'll go over a process that's typical like that. But if you are just, you're a typical ad agency, you're not an internal marketing group, and you maybe have contractors that you don't have to be entering time. That's one of the caveats, is you won't be able to enter time as a free user. So if they have to put time to a project, well then there's a whole webinar and a whole training we can do on contractors. But typically if all they have to do is like mark a task done or something, then you might be able to have a contractor just use a free client login. Or if you maybe internally, you have some people that don't need Workamajig because they're not time enterers, but you don't want to get a seat or a license for them, and you want them to be able um, to see things but not enter time. You'll see today we're going to give the fake user that we're going to show all the rights they could possibly have, and then of course people back off from that. So if you look at that and you say, yeah, but I need them to have XYZ, well, that won't be available because we're going to show you the maximum rights that a free user could have. The other thing is, in the past, and it's been the distant past at this time, it's been a long time that we have our new deliverables feature, but in the past, we didn't have the feature where if you sent a piece of art out and routed it for approval, you would have to log in to Workamajig with a free client user login like this in order to indicate, yes, I approve that, or share data, give feedback. That is no longer true. Now you don't need the free client or portal or client login in order for a user to interact with Workamajig's deliverable feature. It all works through links and emails. So if you want more information on that, or you've been with us for more than 10 years and you don't remember ever learning about the way deliverables work today, there's some webinars you can access, which we'll show you that when we go back to the help guide, or you can always get with your account manager and kind of let them know what you're trying to do and just make sure there's nothing new under the sun from when you implemented a feature years ago. So all that being said, we are going to go into setup to begin with for what needs to be set up in order for you to use this feature. So admin manager, system setup, and then you're going to go into the security settings. And hopefully you're familiar with this back end piece of the tool and setting things up. And hopefully you have access to it. If you don't, someone on your team at your company would be able to assist with this. You can see the tab at the top defaults to full user rights, But today we're talking about those client or free user rights, client portal. So we're going to click on client rights. And I'm going to go ahead and select the security group named clients. You can have multiple security groups that are for clients. And a good reason why you might do this is if you're trying to separate them out and say, these clients can't see work for these other clients. And so that's something we could help you with on an individualized call, helping you get the security settings set up and have multiple client security groups. We're not going to cover that today. We're just going to cover the very standard setup, but just know that that is a feature and an option if you need that. And so the default load for this, whenever you're a brand new client of Workamajig, you being our client, is that you would have a client security group. But over time, if somebody's eliminated that and you no longer have a client security group, we can help you get that set up again. That's no problem. It's very quick and easy. And of course, no fee. So we have a list of people that are in that group. We're going to be using Bendy Irwin today because I've preset some things on her record so we can see some more interesting information that's assigned to her. And then you can see I've selected all of these rights. Now, if you look at a list of full user rights, we have to scroll. I mean, it's a lot of rights, and they're really, some of them are really portioned out and diced out so you can give them view but not change, very specific rights under a full user's rights. But the free user right, we don't even have a scroll bar because there's just so few rights that you could either give or take away. We usually don't have too much of this like broken out, like edit and add are usually together. And it's a lot of view this, view that, delete project requests, something like that. You might not want to give them. So if they do have delete project requests, it would only be project requests that they are a part of. If they don't see them, they can't delete them. So I'll show you what that all looks like when we log in as Bendy as our example here. The other thing is if you did need them to like update files and upload files, they would have to have file system rights here. If you click into this, you can see that I've preset it so that everybody in this group right can do everything. And that's because we just want to show what all the rights are to start. And then of course you could remove some of those if you don't need those. So I'm going to close out of this because we've got this preset with all the rights that we possibly could have. And now I'm going to navigate to the actual contact record. So I'm going to go to my main menu up here in the left-hand corner, and then all the contact informations are under the salesperson security dot. So if I click on salesperson, and then if I click on the contact dot, this would be if I'm looking at an existing contact, which we've preset up Bendy with some records so that we'd have something to look at. But of course, if I'm entering a new contact, I would do the plus icon. And I'm going to go over some of the records that you would want to hit if you're setting up a new client contact that's going to have a login, a free client user portal login. I'll go over those and show you what you would do with the existing Bendy records so that we at least touch on those and you see what you would populate. The other thing is if you don't remember, which you might not be able to test this right after the call, that's okay because we have step-by-step instructions in the help guide, which I'll also reference for you when we're near the end of the call. So we're going to click on the word contacts here just to see our list. If I had to search for an existing contact, I could run my all contacts views. This is really like reports within the system, but I've already got Bendy up and I made her a favorite. And that's a feature that we have in other areas of the tool as well. You can make a project a favorite, you can make a task a favorite, and that way you can find them quickly and easily, and it gives you like a favorite section. So I'm going to just click into the record to open it. And then you can see that if there was conversations that were associated with this contact record, I'd be able to see those here. Projects that I could link to and open and get to easily. These are all links that I could click on to get to the project. So lots of data that's in the actual contacts record. But the most important thing that I want to cover with you today is the fact that you can see what the contact is going to see when they log in to the free client portal. Now, you always could do that by opening another browser, going to your server, whatever it is, app 12, app 11, app 22. We have lots of different servers out there. So you're going to have a different thing here. Even could say your client name if you're on your own server. You're going to go there, you're going to navigate, but you don't always want to do that. Sometimes you want to just quickly see what they would see without having to log out. And that's a hint I should share with you as well if you're going to test anything in here. If you're logged in as yourself and you're in the same browser and you just select a new tab and open it and try to do the login as, Bindi and her password, it'll actually log you out of the system. So whenever you go back in, it'll say Bindi's name. It'll just mess with your test. It won't be an accurate, good test. So if you do want to fully log in, and we recommend that you do, just so you can see everything that free user is going to see, and you might even want to test some like emails that they're going to get, automatic emails, something like that. We want you to use either a different browser. So if I had Firefox or Bing, some other browser, I could log in as my test on the other browser. Or the other thing you could do is as long as you are in an area that you can see everything, you can even log completely out as yourself. So once you've created this, log completely out of yourself if you want to do any testing, because otherwise, if you're in the same browser or a different tab, it'll get crossed up. The other thing is sometimes people want to see the emails, so they put in their work email address for their fake person, my case, Bindi Irwin. You don't want to do that. You want to use maybe, a Hotmail or Gmail or some kind of a generic account, maybe even your own account, so that you can test this, because if you use your work account, sometimes that'll cause problems and you won't see what the user is going to truly see. It'll reflect things that are tied to your user account. So, and that's because most people have their Workamajig or their real live email address in Workamajig under their name. That would be most typical. So use another email. And the other thing is sometimes it's hard to test with just one person. You want to be able to make actions, then populate the field. So that's something that your account manager would be willing to do with you. Or if you have a coworker that you want to test it with, you can do that as well. But it's just a lot easier to test if you have two people. So, all right. So we're going to go into Preview Client Portal here. And basically everything that we're seeing to the right of this gray shaded bar is what the person is going to see. They would see their own name up here. So it would say Bindi Irwin, and we're going to log in as Bindi in just a moment. But I wanted to show you some of the things that are on this screen that can affect what Bindi sees or our free user sees, but they can't make the change. So it's like in addition to the security rights, and it's the secure icon that's labeled settings here. So if I click into that, you can see that the security groups are repeated, and anywhere that you see a black pencil icon, that means I've customized the settings for that particular security group. So if I go to that client security group here, I've selected what I do and don't want them to be able to see on the page. So if I don't want to show deliverables, maybe that's a feature we're not using right now and we don't want to confuse them, I can deselect that and then it won't show. Any of these estimates, maybe you just send estimates through email to them, which is very common now because we have an option where they click on a link and they can approve the estimate right there. They do not have to log into this free client portal to do that. So some of this you might want to deselect if you don't want them to be able to see it. And then if you get down here to the budget, oh, that's a big one that people say, well, I don't really want them to see anything having to do with the budget. And you can deselect that if you would like. There's campaign specific details. This is just something for you to review before you send off that free client login, a password and a login. You want to see everything that they're going to see and be able to control what they see. So that's what you're seeing here. And then I'm going to go ahead and just hit save, even though we really didn't make any changes. Otherwise, it asks, did you really want to leave the page without making any changes? And I'm going to close that panel. That's not something that when they are logged in that they would see. They do not see that settings option. And depending on your security rights, if you're in this view and you don't see that settings option, that means that you don't have the rights to control the settings. That if you're going to be setting up client vendor portal, folks, you probably want to have that because you want to be able to get in there and make sure that they see exactly what you want them to see. We're also going to cover the calendar when we log in as Bindi. This is just a preview, so we're not going to cover the calendar quite yet. But the first thing I wanted to kind of do is show you along the left-hand side that everything's segmentized: estimates to review, deliverables to review, project requests. And before I go any further, we have a question, so I'm going to jump in here. And someone's asking, are those settings per client or for the portal in general? And the answer is it could be either. It's however you want to set it up. So if you want the client, you can set up like for a particular client, and so you could have another security group called client ABC, client XYZ. So you can actually have a security group for each client. Some people do need that. And you can work with your account manager to decide, do I really need to go to that extra level of setting up all those different security groups? But that's a great question because it could be different per client. You could say, well, this client, we want to be able to show estimates, files, whatever, but for this client, we do not. And in order to do that, you'd have to have separate security groups, which are super simple and easy to create. And you can always copy from the one, so you're not starting from scratch, but we're not going to show that in this call. Work with your account manager if you want help in setting up the different security groups. Be more than willing to walk you through that. And a good time to ask questions about, well, what do I really need a different security group for too? So, but in this case, this is all clients. I only have one security group set up for that client. So great question. Okay, so moving forward and just kind of in review, we just have along the left-hand side, estimates, deliverables, different things like project requests. It's pretty intuitive. I know this is where I go to start a new project request. And then you can see historically, what have I not sent for approval? Boy, I need to go in there and send those. It's kind of an alert letting me nobody's ever going to approve my project request because I never sent it. I can see ones that are recently approved, but maybe they haven't been made into a project yet. So it just lets the person manage their work that they have in Workamajig. The views section down here is allowing that free user access to what essentially is a report. So there's more setup for that. And if those of you who are familiar with custom reporting, you know that there's an area where you say which security groups have access to that custom report, and you'd have to give the client's security group access to it for there to be anything that shows when you click here. So I've given lots of access to this person. You may not want them to see a list of all active projects, all, I was testing something, Francis's report there, inactive projects. You might not want all of that. So the good news is the default is they don't have it. You would have to go through an extra step of when creating a view or report, giving that client security group access. If you don't give it to them, they won't see it here. So kind of an extra step, but I wanted to show you because sometimes if you're talking about an internal marketing group, maybe there's, the head of a department or something, and they would want to see all projects, not just projects that they have work assigned to them, because maybe they're not really having things assigned to them. It's their people that have things assigned to them. So this is all optional, and that's why we say work with your account manager to get it exactly how you want it and to meet all of your needs. And we have another question, so I'm going to pause for a second. And then Susan's asking, from any existing contacts, when you're selecting the preview client portal, she was saying it gives her an error message saying unable to access the page at that moment. Yeah, she's asking, is there something that caused that? More than likely, Susan, that's a security rights thing. I kind of don't like that, unable to access that page at any moment. That doesn't really give you the full message, which is usually either something's been deleted. That's another way you might get unable to access that, but I don't think you've deleted anything here. So usually that means that you don't have the security rights. Now, if you're an admin, Susan, and you're seeing that, we should have the security rights. So definitely work with your account manager. They can troubleshoot. And even if you don't want to call, you can just email support@workamajig.com and let them know the client that you're trying to add, and they'll be able to tell you why specifically. Great question. Okay, so we're going to go back into here and just to see like the different things I can search for a project. So if I'm looking for all projects with a particular name in them, when this turns blue, that's letting me know I can click into that and see the details. And so this doesn't look exactly like what you would see when you click into a project. It's much reduced, but I have given this person a lot of access. So they can see spec sheets that are tied to them. They can open the spec sheet. They can modify the spec sheet, all kinds of access that I've given this free user. So definitely, something that you might love or something you might say, wow, we really need to dial that back and we can help you dial it back. The other thing is you can see in red that it's letting me know I have a deliverable to review. So even beyond this deliverable telling me, okay, this is the test I set up for the webinar, you also can see like for this one, test 017, I've never even clicked into this. So it's red saying you have a deliverable to review. So yes, these are here and I've looked at that, before the call, so it's not red anymore, but this one is red. So I'm going to click into it and then I could see the deliverables. I could click into that. I could see the picture. I could add comments. Now this call is not about deliverables, so I'm not going to train you how to do deliverables, but if you don't know about this feature, definitely watch the webinar and then we can get you additional training with your account manager. But we're not going to, it's a full hour long call just about deliverables. So we're going to not go into that in great detail other than to say you can access them from the client portal. You can also see things like percent completes, things that reference the project schedule. You can't see the actual project schedule, but you can see a lot of information in here. And again, maybe it's too much. That's okay. We can help you dial that back so that you're not showing so much information. Okay, I'm going to dismiss this one. Any other questions that anybody has before we kind of move into logging in as Bindi and seeing a little more from that perspective? All right, awesome. Okay, I'm going to close out of this. I'm going back to the actual record for Bindi. And before I leave this, I just want to show you. So this is where we were when we were in the client portal and previewing it. But since we didn't set Bindi up from scratch, I want to show you in the contact settings some of the areas that you want to be careful and you want to make sure are populated so that you can actually set this record up. So if I go into contact settings, it's going to take a second and it's going to open it up for me. I'm going to start at the top with the security controls. This is where you want to enter a user ID for that person. However, if you enter a user ID and a password and you deselect this free login box, depending on your contract, if you've already used the maximum number of users in your contract, you'll start to get charged for this user. So you really want to be careful with that. Now, the good news is the free login box is checked automatically. So somebody would have to intentionally come in here and deselect it in order for you to get charged. So just something to note and be careful about. The active box is if you don't want to see that contact in your records any longer. You probably can't delete them because if they've got anything tied to them, like this has projects tied and historical data tied to the contact, it would never let me delete it. I would just say, we'll make it inactive so we don't see it to select on any lists anymore and you don't have it showing anywhere. It'd be inactive. But free login, that's super important. And we put a little message here. If the box is not checked and the contact has a user ID and a password, you're going to be billed for the user. It just says user ID, so I would maybe even password isn't necessary. Definitely, you don't want to uncheck that box or you're going to get charged. Setting a new password, you want to pick something fairly easy for them, like we mentioned earlier, so that they can get logged in, with no hassle. But then we're going to direct them or train them that they should change the password to something that's easier for them to remember. Maybe matches the password for another tool that they use, something like that. But the good news is if you ever need to change the password, you can change the password on them. So if you decided that you no longer want them to be able to use the free client portal, if you come in here and blank the password out or change it to something else, whatever you decide to do, you have full control if you have access to the client record, because you can lock them out so that they're not able to get in there. The other thing to note is that they're in the client security group. You want to make sure that if you've created a new security group, it's kind of chicken and egg. You have to create the security group before you can assign someone to it. So the security group creation is done on that very first screen that we went into in the admin system setup area. And again, you need any help with that, we'll walk you through it. Okay, somebody has a question. What does the administrator checkbox give them? It really, you do not check that box. It actually is intended only, I shouldn't even really be on this page, but because they pretty much just copy the code of a client, or I'm sorry, an employee. So never, they cannot really be an administrator, but never check the box for someone who's a free user to be an administrator. This is talking about administrating Workamajig overall. So if you were to give them this box, even though they're in the client security group, well, first of all, they would no longer be a free login. You'd get charged for them. And also it would ignore the client security group and give them all rights in the system. So very good question. Do not check the administrator box for anyone, for an employee record or for a contact record, unless they are truly an administrator. Most people don't have to worry about that because you don't even see that box unless you are an administrator. Only an administrator can make someone else an administrator. So I am one. I see the box. I'm not going to check it. Great question. Okay, that's really the only two things you have to hit here. You just have to make sure they have a password and a user ID, and then also confirm that they're in the client security group. Now, the projects and time section just kind of allows that user to be automatically subscribed to, a notification when the project files are uploaded. Usually this is not done for a free user because you have the option to set them as a deliverable reviewer at the time you created a deliverable. You can add them to a conversation at the time you create the conversation, and that gives you some more protection. If you have a client record, a contact free user that has the same name as your employee, so say it's something common, Jane Smith or something like that, then there's an actual checkbox on the conversation where you indicate this should be viewable by contacts. And we did that particularly for a situation where you have employees with the same name as contacts. You might have accidentally added a contact when you really meant to add the employee. If you don't check the box saying contacts can see the record, don't worry, because it won't, even if you added the contact accidentally, they won't ever be able to see the conversation. So there's some kind of safeguards in place for when you do start using a feature like this, because you really just want to make sure that you're getting the message to the right people and people are seeing what they should, and we're kind of protecting those rights. So the other thing in here is notifications, and this allows you to set automatic emails that are system generated for this free user. So a lot of these are going to be irrelevant for a free user. This is just a repeat of the list that's in the employee section, but something like missing time would never apply because they can never enter time. But something like, oh, there's a new spec sheet, that might apply. Again, budgets really shouldn't apply to them. So there's very few things in here that would apply to them. I would say probably task reminders maybe, and the first one that we talked about, which is a new spec sheet. That's really the only things that I would ever give them access to as far as notifications is concerned. All right, so I am going to log out of this as myself. So I'm going to go to the main menu here and I'm going to log out, and then we're going to log in as Bindi, so you can see how easy it would be for them. Now, typically it would be an email address, and that's because if you're on a server that has a number next to it here, that means that you're on a server with other clients of ours. So we have lots of clients on the same server, but everything is locked and segmented by that user ID. So Bindi is an unusual name, of course, but if they had a common, even first and last name, you actually want to use an email address because that is always going to be unique, and you're never going to get like a notice saying, oh, there's already a user with that name. And you might say, well, we don't have a user named Tom Smith. Well, you don't, but another client might, and you're all on the same server. So definitely use a full email address, just like we do for our employee logins. They're usually a full email address. And then you would enter the password. By the way, I like to mention, just as kind of a side note, where it says forgot password. If any of you have ever tried to use that and said, that didn't work, there is additional setup that has to be done in your back end settings in order for this feature to work. So, probably it's not going to work for a free user. They would have to have this, you'd have to have the settings first of all. And we would be able to walk you through that if you did want them to use that. But usually people don't want the free users being able to reset their passwords if they've purposely changed it to something to keep them out of the system. The best way to keep somebody out of the system, if you need to, once you've already given them passwords and that kind of thing, is actually just change the password. That way they can't get in. And then I would contact them and say, oh, we're no longer using the free client feature or whatever, so that they know they can't get in, even if they try to. But Bindi can get in. We're going to log in as her. And then this is going to tell me that my password is too easy. And I know that already. Okay, so now you can see it says Bindi's name up here. She has her own little bell icon, so she can easily get to, oh, here's all the estimates that need to be approved. Here's all the deliverables that need to be approved. She has system messages she needs to read. She just can see that data, that information. While it's over here, this kind of puts it all in one place, letting them know that action needs to be taken on these. So it's kind of in two places. It's in here in your bell icon, and then it's also over here under the to review part. Now I'm going to click on Bindi's name to show you that that person could add an avatar for themselves. They could change contact information in here. They can change their login information. So if you do give them a very simple password, you can instruct them when training a free user, hey, go ahead and put in your password and confirm it. Passwords are all masked, so you would not be able to see their password. Whatever they choose, it'll be secret. Even if you go in there, it'll just show asterisks next to their name. It won't show their actual password. That's true of employee records as well. And then the default settings in here, maybe there are some things they would want to have changed in here, but things like backup approver, that'll only work if that backup approver contact actually has all those rights that this Bindi Irwin client contact has. So I just be careful with that. And when you're training them, maybe they really don't need a backup approver for anything. If they're out of the office, you can change in the Workamajig system who the approver is. That'd make a little more sense. This is also where they go to if they want to log out. We really don't want them to just like log in and never log out of here. We would like them to log out periodically because we're always pushing updates. And if there's any, thing that needs to be updated, that won't happen until they log out. Now we do have another question, and it says from Corey, is it possible to show open invoices in the portal as well? Yes. So that's one of the things, when clients need to pay their invoices and we want them to see, oh, you have open invoices. I don't think I have any open invoices. Let's just look really quick here. Oh, maybe I do. I have some. It's been a while since I've added them. They're from 2018, 19, and 2021. But yeah, we do have some a place for them to see their open invoices. And they could even see their paid invoices. So they can see both. They have a drop down and it's pretty intuitive for them. Thanks for that question. Somebody has another question here. Oh, no, that's Corey. Let me say answered so that we dismiss that. All right. Hopefully that answered your question. Let's just say yes, and then we'll close out of here. So lots of options in here. And if you're looking and working along with me, you're like, I don't see all of these options. There's setup that's involved. So, you'd have to have them actually on the invoice, and then you'd have to have this review available for them to run. So it's all, but lots of setup. And then somebody says, can freelancers see POs? You know what? That's a good question. I think so. We'd have to test that. I don't have any purchase orders in here. But as long as they have access in the security rights, and I can't remember if that's one of the specific security rights is visual on POs, but definitely that's something I would test. And you can even test with your account manager if you want help testing it. But it seems like that's pretty innocuous and we'd give them access to that. But then again, depending on, what is available for them to see, we may not give purchase order access because maybe they could see more than one purchase order. So sometimes there's code in the back end that has to be designed so that it restricts. And if we don't have that code, then they usually don't have that as an option on the security rights because we can't restrict it just to that person. So that's a good one. POs, I'm not sure about. Good question. All right. So I'm going to close that, dismiss, and that way we're ready for another question if we need one. Okay, the one thing I wanted to show you here that I didn't show you in the other screen is this calendar view. So I'm going to click on the calendar and it's going to take a little while to download because there's a lot of data that's pulling in here. But essentially before the call, I went and added this Bindi Irwin person to different projects and different tasks so that those would show on the list. And then I also ran a resource manager report that will plot it out in a view for you. And that's because I have a client, a particular client that is an internal marketing group, and they heavily use this feature. They want everything to be plotted out in a calendar view where somebody who's like a department head, for instance, can see only their projects. And so there's, you're not going to be able to see it in here because Bindi wouldn't be able to run a report like that. She would only be able to see the results of that report displayed in this view. So I'll show you when we log back in as my login where I would go to set up calendars like this. But you basically, in your display options section, I forgot to give the other one. I'm going to give you one more if it's available. It's called testing. There it is. So what I'm doing here, and this is something that Bindi could do, as long as she has access to the calendar report, she could add an additional calendar report. So what these are basically resource manager calendars that I've run. And if that's a feature you're not familiar with, either our resource manager feature or even just running traffic calendars, creating new ones, then that's something we can train you on as well. But of course, it's probably take more than time than we have left. For sure, it would take more time than we have left to train you how to do that. So just know that that's an option. And then hopefully if I refresh it, it does take a little bit to download. So it can take up to like 5 minutes. So we may not even get to see it. But essentially it plots every task out that you filtered the report for. There it goes. Woo, it's a lot in a calendar form. Now you can see this is not terribly easy to read. So you would want to be careful about how much data you put in that report because otherwise it's kind of hard to kind of see this, although you just basically see a repeat on the days that have a task where something's due. However, it's just good to know that this is a feature. This is a pretty lightly used feature. So if you have questions about it, you just think, well, that would be really great if maybe you're in an internal marketing group and you want to see that. Usually people do not want to do this if you're a typical ad agency. You just don't want clients to have this deep of a view into your workflows and processes, and you don't need their feedback on things necessarily. So this is really more used by internal marketing groups that have, basically shareholders that they have to, or stakeholders that they have to report back to, and that they're kind of sometimes managing the project, even though they're not even a user in Workamajig. All right. Back to our main menu, and that's going to take us just to the client vendor portal screen. Now, sometimes people want to add like a background, or they don't want it to say Workamajig here. They want it to say, something that's branded or their company's name, and you can do that. And I'm going to log back in as myself as an administrator so I can show you where to go to do that. But before I do that, we're going to not be coming back into this screen. So I just want to point out a couple of other interesting options. You can see completed projects, and you can also show all all projects that are for your company. So that's why I say you want to maybe have a separate client security group for different companies, because you might have rights that you wanted to be different depending on the company. Okay, it looks like somebody else had a question. I don't see it. Oh, here it's Rita. Where can they see all their open projects at a glance? Oh, okay. So that is show all projects for my company. And this also shows all their projects at a glance. Now you might say, well, this is not much of a glance. I have to scroll down. And that's true. So if you give them access to the views for projects, then you could say like all projects, and then you could run this and you know, filter it in different ways. Now, this, because I didn't filter and I can't, they don't have modify, so they can't change what the filters are. So they're only going to see it if it's a project that they are a part of that's in the all projects filter and that I've set up as a actual admin on the account. So this we would help you get this set up so that they see all their projects. But this is probably, you know, a lot of people do not like to give views access to a client unless you're an internal marketing group. If you're an agency, you don't necessarily want them to be able to run a view for all projects. It needs to be filtered down so it's only projects that they're a part of. So you'd actually probably have like a specific custom view, and it would be projects for XYZ company or something like that. So these are all generic views. You would really want a specific view that was filtered only to show their options. Great question, Rita. And then Kristen asks, can you show what an assigned task looks like? Yes, so let me just miss both of these and then we'll just show you what it looks like when you drill in. So this is actually a task that is assigned. So these are tasks. They also are project names, but they are tasks. So whenever you enter in here, this is what they're going to see. It's, you know, if you said, well, I want to see an actual task in here, I don't think I have anything that's assigned to Bindi in this particular project. I think there was one project that I was looking at earlier. It's 017. Let's see if this one has a task. So you can see they don't have like access to see a list of tasks. They just have very high level information in here. And I don't know that I set this up so that you could see a task for her, but if she did have a task, it would show under the assigned task. Oh, let's see if maybe, oh, here it is. So something else to watch out for. Notice that it said assigned tasks, and you might at first glance think, oh, there are no assigned tasks. It's just that this caret was closed and the default must be closed because I didn't close it before this call. And then you can see when you click on this, it's just a little bit more information. You know, it might say for the person's name, it might have just, you know, something entered that tells them what to do. You know, please approve the deliverable. Well, that's another step to have to come in here and approve the deliverable. But maybe you want to get a notification when that task is complete, and all they can do is say done. They can't like do anything else. They can't put time to it. And then once they say done, then you can't see it anymore. So that was a one and done, ta-da, because I don't have any other tasks assigned to Bindi. But when you're testing this on your own, you know, you need a test project, obviously, to put a bunch of assignments in, and then you can kind of see what they see, but they don't really see a lot. It really is designed to be used for an internal marketing group, and nobody's putting time. It's not really designed for contractors, because contractors, we would think that you want them to be able to enter time entries. So contractors usually there's a whole contractor training and process, but you basically just make them live and only pay for them for the days they're using the tool. So that's usually the contractor way, Workamajig way, if you will. But there's always workarounds. And if it's enough for you to just have them say done, they can do that. And you could test it with a contractor and see if it's enough for you. If it is, then you don't have to pay for them even for those days that they're using it. Great question. Okay, so I am going to log out as Bindi because I want to log back in as the administrator on the account as me, and it knows mine because I had it memorize it for that browser. So I'm I'm kind of cheating, getting in here pretty quickly. But basically, the one thing that I wanted to show you just really quickly, and this is kind of advanced, so if you don't want to use this, you certainly don't have to, but this is that traffic calendar feature that I was talking about. So you have to set it up though, and this is the one that I pulled up, this testing. You have to basically filter it so it's just showing the tasks that you would want to display on a calendar for that person. So if you need any help with this, we're not going to go over how to set it up right now because this is kind of advanced feature, but and not everybody uses these. But if you're interested in learning more about the traffic calendar and how it can be viewable for a free user, definitely work with your account manager and they'll help you set that up. I think there's even a help guide or a webinar on it, and I'll look at that before we get off this call. This is just another, you can see they're different when you click on them, they have a little gear icon. This is just another traffic calendar that I had set up, and this one just showed incomplete tasks. This one showed all tasks. And if you click on the little gear icon, it says whether or not it's visible to clients. So mine is set to be visible to clients. If you want to use this feature and you're using the client portal and you would never want a client to be able to do this, you just have to make sure that it's always deselected, that it's visible to a client. I added that. So I think the default is that it's not visible to a client. You would have had to add it. I added it for training purposes for this call. All right, so that was the one thing I wanted to show you there. Now, I promised you I'd show you a few things in the help guide as well. So if you come in here and you just start typing client portal on the search, you can see there's actually a client portal guide. And this is actually designed to be modified and or just distributed to the users who you've set up to use this feature. So there's a lot in here. So some people say, well, this shows them all kinds of things that they're going to say, oh, I want that. And we don't want them to be able to see that. So it's modifiable. You can download it. You can change it so that they don't see everything. But if you're giving them, access to deliverables, access to all these things, this will save you an awful lot of time because you can just send them the link. Like I said, you don't have to be a Workamajig user or have a login. You could just send them the link to this client portal guide, and then they could review this. You could review it with them. You could customize it if you wanted to download it. Sorry, I was going to show you how to download it, but it's kind of hidden up here. Let me get rid of that boot camp. So you can download this. And where's the download option? You definitely can download these. I don't know why. I think it's because I have my one area hidden there, and now let me close out of some of these. Well, maybe you can't download it easily. Oh, there it is, PDF. We changed where it's located. So you could download it, change it, cut things out that you don't want them to have access to, and then share your downloaded PDF with your group that's going to be using free client portals. The other thing that you might want to be interested in looking at in here is if you wanted to watch a webinar on deliverables, because I kept saying, oh, you could learn more about deliverables. There's upcoming webinars, but if you just do webinar and search, then, it looks like it gives me right to, probably because I looked at this last, takes me right to the upcoming ones, but really you need like the bank of webinars. So you can always navigate to this original webinar screen, and then anything that has to do with project managers, which would definitely be deliverables. We just haven't done one yet this year. You're only seeing the ones that we've done in 2023, I believe there. So you could say 2022 webinars, and then there's lots of deliverables ones. There's an advanced deliverables, ins and outs of deliverables, regular deliverables. So huge bank of things that you could review if you wanted to look through that and watch another webinar that was done in the past. All right, so I'm going to pause again for questions. I know you guys have been really great about asking questions as we've gone through, so maybe you don't have any, but I want to give everybody just a couple minutes to think of any questions that they might have. All right. Well, thank you all so very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend the webinar. Definitely follow up with your account manager if you see anything here today that you want to learn more about, take advantage of. You need any help setting anything up, help testing. That's what we're here for. We want you to utilize us, and it gives us a chance to get to know you better too. So, oh, we have one last question before we get going, and it's just Corey saying thanks. You're very welcome, Corey. Thank you guys. We really appreciate you attending these. Um, Super, super good for us too. And if you ever have feedback that you want to share, we'd really love a webinar on XYZ, whatever that may be. Definitely share that feedback with us too, because we're always looking for topics that we have, at least a few people who would be interested in seeing a webinar on. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.